What's good, everybody? Welcome to Real Talk, AOE's new movies and TV show review segment. Today we're talking about Nosferatu, directed by Robert Egger, starring Lily Rose Depp and Nicholas Hoult. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Area of entertainment.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Today we're talking about Nosferatu, and let's get into it. So, as you already know or may not know, Nosferatu is a remake of the original 1922 movie that pretty much was smuggled into America at the time. It's pretty much about a vampire-esque
Well,
person.
basically, the director of that movie, he found Bram Stoker's Dracula at that time, and he wanted to basically make it into a movie, but he wanted it to make it his own thing. So that's why instead of calling him Dracula, the vampire is actually Count Orlok, and it's not very specific on the Count Orlok being a vampire. He's just more of like a guy that he drinks blood and stuff and bites people. So basically, it's just Nosferatu was a very original take from Bram Stoker's Dracula until, as the years went along, they started to make Dracula with Bela Lugosi, which is that movie that we all know Dracula as. But Nosferatu was the original first vampire movie ever. And
it was so close to the original that Bram Stoker actually, his widow, sued the makers of Nosferatu because it was so close. However, after that lawsuit, they had to destroy all the copies of the movie, but a few did get out, and
they basically pieced it together to basically make it into a film. So if you actually watch that film, which is kind of easy to do, you can just search it up on YouTube or something.
Yeah, it's actually free on YouTube now.
It's a very old film, but you could see there's cuts that make no sense, and there's footage that's like why is that there? Why is that there? It's because it was very put together.
Yeah, so Nosferatu came out this year in 2024, and well, I mean, all I have to say about it is if you do like the original or if you do like any gothic horror movies, go definitely give it a watch. Robert Egger did an amazing job. He nailed the atmosphere. You can look at all his previous movies, The Witch or The Lighthouse, and you know his style is very specific, and he nailed it this time. So yeah, if you like that kind of movie, I would give it a thumbs up. Definitely go watch it. Anything else you want to say about it?
Nothing. I think you said it all. I like the movie too, cause fun fact, I've seen the old one. It's pretty cool, and yeah, it looks great. The way how he kind of translated it into this new modern era kind of, and try to make it also his own.
So we definitely wanted to get our opinions out there in the beginning. We're gonna move into spoiler territory. So welcome to the spoiler section, everybody. Thank you for staying to the video. So let's get into it. So Nicholas Hoult, who plays Thomas Hutter, he's a real estate agent, and his boss tells him, listen, if you want this promotion, you gotta go to this guy's house and bring him the deed to this new property that he wants to buy. He's an old guy, he can't travel here, and this is why we need somebody to actually travel. Now, this is taking place back in, I'd say,
the 18th
century, I'd say.
Probably.
So
in Germany.
Yeah, in Germany. So the travel back then took days, weeks, and months, depending on how far you were going.
It was just horses.
So he takes the job, and pretty much, he has a wife. He's doing this for his wife, so that way they can get enough money to buy a home and all that. So he's doing this.
And his wife is tweaking out.
Right, so his wife, Lily Rose Depp, there's a little backstory there where she kind of had a weird altercation with Nosferatu or Count Orlok, and
it's
the dreamscape, I call it, because she only has these kind of interactions when she's dreaming.
It's kind of weird, the way how they kind of explained it, where it's it's basically telling us that she knew Count Orlok a long time ago when she was younger, and she basically Nosferatu and her had a little thing, but then they broke off, but then Nosferatu kind of cursed her, so she always has that curse on her, and she has dreams about him and all that stuff. And
to kind of piggyback off of that, I was actually reading a little bit about it, and when she's dreaming or in a sleep trance, she's actually communicating with him in kind of like a ghost realm. because he is the undead.
Yes.
So she contacted him while she was in a dream, thinking it was only a dream, and she was talking to him and kind of building this relationship with him in her dreams. She never thought it was a real thing until, spoiler alert, he actually shows up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the story, the original story. Count Orlok was gonna buy the house. That's accurate to the original.
Yeah.
But the way he gets introduced to Thomas's wife,
Helen, it's very different.
Ellen, right? Ellen?
Yeah, it's very different.
It's different because in the original, he sees a picture of her that Thomas drops, and he falls in love with her automatically,
just
right
off the
away.
bat.
And then he wants her and needs her.
And
in this one,
and quote unquote, like, remember, it's a movie set in the 20s, so it's just like very like to the point. Like, oh, he drops the picture, and Count Orlok's like, oh, and then he's like, oh, sign the house, and that's it. That's just like how it is.
And then he.
But of course, in this, like, they have to explain it more and kind of like,
yeah, they change it.
But yeah, and then
so in this one, instead of him falling in love with her right away, he's built this relationship with her and kind of grew jealous of Thomas because he actually got to marry the girl that he loved.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a, how you say it? Like a,
it's
like a love triangle.
Yeah.
It's a love triangle between these two. So,
but like,
fast forward,
where
now
like
Thomas is leaving to go to Count Orlok's. She's having these weird nightmares, and then she starts freaking out, getting possessed.
And
nights.
like, we get introduced to like other characters, like this dude's it's like, yeah, is it like his it's like his brother or something.
Oh, his friend.
Yeah, or Frederick. Like his friend, where like
Frederick, who's played by Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
Aaron Taylor-Joy or the
Craven.
Or Craven.
I would say this, like, this movie is this movie's a way better movie for Aaron Taylor Johnson, because like, unlike Craven, this is actually a good movie.
It's a good written movie.
Yeah, it's a good written movie. But anyways, yeah, like that's like his friend, and he tells his friend like, yo, like, I gotta go, and then like he said, oh, don't worry, like,
I'll take care of you.
Yeah, like, Helen can like stay with me, you know, like, it's all good. Ellen can stay with me, blah blah. And yeah, so like we get introduced to those characters, and also we get and then yeah, it just shows this he leaves.
Yep, Thomas leaves on his travels to go deliver the deed.
And of course it doesn't show everything, because that whole travel is like a whole like week, 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's like
so
2 weeks.
So it just like kind of jumps to that. And then of course it's Germany, so it's snowing and all that stuff, and he goes to the a little like town, or like it's like a little village,
a gypsy village,
where
they have a lot of superstitions, and they kind of warn him not to go to this castle because that castle's cursed, and they stay away from it as much as possible.
And then he starts having dreams about vampires, aka like Nosferatu, because like it's kind of like the whole thing of like, oh, you're on his land now, so now
he curses you
and stuff, which is actually not that part. The whole like thing of that is not in the original. In the original, they did it in like a different way to kind of like introduce like that character to like vampires, where he basically gets a hotel room, and then he finds a book in there that tells about vampires, and it says Nosferatu in there. And also in the original, the people in the town basically say, I don't think they're gypsies. It's more like the people in the town in the original, they say like, oh, there's a werewolf out there and stuff. And basically the werewolf in that movie is Nosferatu.
Right, he can transform.
Yeah, he can transform.
A werewolf.
But yeah, they're saying, oh, he's a werewolf, so make sure like you stay indoors. And then like it just basically just like he finds the book, but then of course in that movie he's just laughing at it. He's like, oh, that's fake, blah blah, and then like he just goes on his way. So it's a very different, like, it's the same concept. Like he goes to a village or a place to get a hotel room and just like chill, but the whole like concept of like is different, where it's like, oh, curse and like gypsies and all that, and then this is more like, oh, like just this is werewolf.
More to the point. Yeah. You got to remember the original movie had a bunch of cuts, so Robert Eggers kind of took his own liberties and his own art style and added to the story, as well as adding his own spin to everything. So we left off at the village. Once he leaves the village, he starts, walking and he actually riding to the castle, and he gets up to close to the I say he get close enough to the village where Nosferatu actually or Count Orlok sends a carriage to go get him.
Yeah, and then in the original that okay, so in that so in the new one, it's kind of like a ghost type of like carriage where it's like there's no one technically driving it. Like the door just open, he just gets in, they just drives him over there, and then like the carriage just leaves, and that's it. And it's kind of like the way how they filmed it. It's kind of like a ghostly atmosphere where it's like, oh, like what the heck's going on, like what that like, and then he just gets in. But the difference that they did from like the original is that in the original there was actually a dude that was riding the carriage, and of course in the 20s it was like the way how they filmed it, it's like the carriage is like going like really fast and stuff, and the person who's driving it, you could tell that it's Count Orlok driving it, but he's wearing like a big scarf that covers his face. But you could tell that it's him, but he's just like telling them to like get inside the carriage, and basically like, it's kind of like oblivious on like whether or not like, oh, it's him or not, but it's definitely him. So it kind of just shows like, oh shoot, like Count Orlok can do like different tasks and stuff. Like he's the one who got the dude to come over here.
Yeah.
And also when the dude got there, like he was just waiting for him. And the same thing kind of happened too. So but anyways, yeah, he brings him to his castle. Very dark atmosphere, like it's like very like it's a castle. Opens the door, and it's the same thing. Nosferatu is literally just waiting for him when the doors open, and that's kind of the same. And then throughout this whole thing, everything kind of is like the same.
Right. So yeah, it's all similar
like,
to the original, but
just walking through the castle, just
but
like
in between
stuff.
all of this, we're jumping back to his wife.
The other story that's
happening that's showing her actually going through some sort of possession or I don't know, like weird daydreaming or just night walks and sleepwalks.
And this part doesn't happen in the original, because the original is just straight like, oh, it just shows the full thing on like Nosferatu or Count Orlok and this guy. So this kind of like shows more stuff, but while we're cutting to her story, we meet new characters like the doctor.
Yep, the doctor.
And then the doctor says like, oh, like I know a guy, he's my teacher that
got banned from medicine
because
he was more into the occult.
Yeah.
He liked to study the occult, and he got banned from medicine.
And
who's I'd say Dr. Albin, who's William Dafoe's character.
Yes. And fun fact, Willem Dafoe actually plays Nosferatu in another movie that shows like that.
Another Nosferatu movie, right?
Yeah, it's basically like a movie that explains like the behind the scenes of like that, like of the filming of Nosferatu. It's actually a really good movie. It's called Shadow of the Vampire. But anyways, besides the point, yeah, like so we see kind of the doctor get his help, and then like he is trying to help Ellen out. Like like what's going on, and he's trying to figure out like, oh, what's up with her, and that's when he figures out like, oh, like there's like possessed. She's possessed by like a powerful
being.
Well, he says it's a demon at first.
Yeah, he thinks it's a demon possession, but later on he realizes it's the Nosferatu, which I believe Nosferatu means bringer of plagues.
Yes.
Or bringer of dread.
But yeah, and then after that we go back to Nosferatu, and everything is kind of like the exact same thing like the original. He's like, oh, like let me sign like the deed, like, and they're just walking around the castle, they're just chilling. And of course, like the only difference is that in the original, this guy Thomas, he drops the picture of Ellen, and that's when Nosferatu's like, oh, like, and then that's when he like goes for it. But in this one, it's different. It's more like there's a locket with her hair. And then
she gave it to him before he left.
Yeah, and then he takes Nosferatu takes like the locket, and that's when like he's like signing stuff, and like it's basically all the same. It's just there's little tiny details that make it different. And then same thing, like Thomas kind of walks around the castle, like kind of like snooping, and
so I believe he's been there for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And Nosferatu is kind of stringing him along to make sure that he stays a little longer, while Nosferatu gets ready to actually move to ship himself to Germany, where his wife is, where Ellen is.
Yeah.
So in this process, he's waking up in the morning with these holes in his chest.
Which in the original, he thinks it's like mosquito bites. and like he just kind of like laughs it off, like, oh shoot, there's mosquito bites. But in this one, it's more like serious and more
it's like really in the center of his chest.
It's like more like, oh, like this is like a serious thing. But yeah, and then just keeps going, and then that's when he finds his like he finds his tomb.
I think at one point he's like, listen, I'm having these dreams, they can't all be real, or they can't all be fake. So he's like, let me investigate a little bit. So he ends up trying to leave the castle, but the big gate is locked.
Yeah.
So then he goes into kind of like the cellar area where he sees Nosferatu's coffin,
his tomb, and that is the same as like the original, where he finds his coffin and he sees like, oh, this dude's a vampire. The only difference is that in the new one, he tries to kill him.
Yep, he grabs a stake.
Yeah, he tries to kill him.
Because in the beginning, before he went to the castle, the gypsies had a ritual where he kind of was snooping on them at night, and they sacrificed. I don't think they sacrificed her.
It's more like they killed a
vampire by staking him in the heart with a stake. So he's seen that, and they told him like, this is how we get rid of evil. So he remembered that and was like, this guy's in a coffin, I gotta kill him, like this is evil.
Yeah, and then he tries to do it, and the Nosferatu wakes up, finds out, and then that's when he runs around the castle, and then like basically it's like, you know, like a horror movie type of like, oh, he closes the door, Nosferatu's using his shadow to like kind of like control him and stuff.
Yeah, and Nosferatu can turn into wolves.
Yeah.
So he turns into wolves to chase him, and chases Thomas back to his room, and he's kind of stuck there. And in the meantime, Nosferatu locks him in his room. So his only course of action is to jump out the window into the actual river behind the castle.
Which all of that is exactly the same like the original, except for the exception of, you know, jumping. Not jumping. More like in the original, he never tried to kill him. He just ran away, and just like he was in his room and he was just scared. And then Nosferatu was kind of like setting up his move, and that's when he kind of was like, Nosferatu locked him in his room, and that's when he's like, oh, I gotta get out of here. And that's when he made rope out of like his sheets and stuff, and like he escaped like that. So yeah, it's kind of the exact same.
Similar, yeah.
It's basically the exact same thing. It's just a little bit different in the way how they put it.
Yeah, I feel like the newer movie has more urgency. It's more of a scarier tone to it.
Yes.
Because in the original, it wasn't really a scary kind of scene, or you know, there wasn't no urgency in that scene. It was more like, hey, I'm stuck in this room, let me fashion some rope so I can get out of here. Versus the other thing is like he's being chased, he thinks friggin' Nosferatu's gonna kill him, and he's trying to kill him, and then, you know, he just jumps out the castle. So he jumps out the castle, and he kind of washes up on shore, and the gypsies find him.
Was it like the priests? Or like the nuns?
Well, it was the nuns.
It was the nuns.
The nuns find him and bring him into the church. And since he's been in Nosferatu's castle for so long, he kind of has the dark essence inside of him. So they kind of do a prayer to kind of exercise.
Yeah, which is not in the original at all. But
while that's going on, Nosferatu's on the ship.
Yeah, and all that is exactly like the same. You know, he just. While like in all of his coffins, there's rats of course that bring like the plague, and he basically just kills every single person on the ship.
Yeah.
And basically, all that is exactly the same as the original, and
it's similar to the Demeter.
Yeah, and the last voyage of the Demeter, which, like, if you want, you know, there's like a kind of like, you know, you can kind of like watch like the first half of Nosferatu, and then when he gets on the boat, you could kind of like pause it and then watch the last voyage. And then the last voyage kind of like picks up like right after, and then you can continue watching it.
But the Demeter was in Bram Stoker's book, so it's technically in Nosferatu is not the Demeter. It's a smaller ship, because
it's the same concept.
It's the same concept. Yeah, he gets shipped, he kills everybody on the boat, he crashes the boat, but while crashing the boat, he unleashes his plague, which is brought by him controlling the rats and all of the creatures and stuff.
Yeah. And, like, everything else is the same. Like, Thomas is trying to get home. He gets home, meets... Oh, yeah. Let's get back to Ellen. Ellen is kind of going through the same thing. She's having dreams.
They're getting worse.
And they're getting much worse. That there's even a point where back to when Thomas was getting attacked by Nosferatu in the castle, he has a vision of Ellen killing him or biting him. So yeah, it's kind of like Thomas and Ellen are kind of like having like both like kind of like weird dreams, and she's having it like really like bad. But yeah, that's what's happening with her. And the second that Nosferatu shows up, that's when she says like, oh, he's here. But also it's kind of like oblivious, because also at the same time Thomas shows up at like, you know, like their house. So it's kind of like, oh, is she saying like for Nosferatu or Thomas? But anyways, but all that stuff just happens, and yeah, and then all of them kind of get together again, like Thomas and Ellen.
So Thomas pretty much talks to the doctors and kind of explains to them like, listen, this isn't just a plague, this is evil coming. And then before actually Thomas shows up, Nosferatu's henchman, the real estate guy,
aka Renfield.
He's kind of telling, you know, the doctors like, hey, he's coming, like like my master's coming.
He's basically inside like the cell, he's just being creepy, and that's exactly like the original. Like in the original, where like his buddy's just like, oh, like, and like he's like grabbing like insects, eating them, all that, like all of that is exactly the same. Probably a little bit more crazier in this one, because instead of eating bugs, he actually eats a freaking bird, like a pigeon.
Like he grabs a pigeon and just bites
which is crazy. And but all that is exactly the same.
And he escapes when Nosferatu arrives. He escapes, and he kind of guides Nosferatu to the new house that he purchased from Thomas while signing the deed. You know, they bring his coffin to that house, and at this time, you know, Thomas is gathering with Willem Dafoe's character as well as the other doctor. I think his name is Wilhelm. Wilhelm. So them three get together and are like, listen, we got to kill this evil. When Nosferatu arrived, the plague happened, and it actually killed a
lot of people.
It killed a lot of people, but it also killed Jackass's whole family. Not Jackass. Kick-Ass's whole family.
Basically, Aaron Taylor Johnson, his character, basically Nosferatu, like the plague basically kills his whole family, which is his wife and 2 daughters, and his character is very distraught. Like he's depressed. He's like kind of like a little bit rageful.
And he doesn't believe it's Nosferatu did.
He believes it's the plague. But then eventually he kind of believes a little bit, but still he thinks it's the plague, and he actually catches the plague, and then he dies, and then it's just like it's very depressed. It's very like depressing.
So that kind of motivates everybody. Hey, we gotta go kill him. So they gather together, and they plan on getting him at night. While not at night, but like when he's gonna be in his coffin. And stake him. In the meantime, Ellen is making another plan, saying like, listen, he doesn't want you guys. He wants me.
It's Willem Dafoe. He tells her.
No, because Willem Dafoe's walking to his lab, and she's like, hey, can I walk with you? She's telling him.
Well, actually,
she tells him the plan that she's gonna.
You sure it's not him?
Yeah, I'm telling you.
All right.
Because they drop him off, and then she's like, let me walk you to your door.
And then he tells her, he's like, hey, like, or no, maybe she tells him that he's like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's how.
Because she's like, he wants me, and I think I'm the only one that can kill him.
Basically, long story short, Ellen and this dude Willem Dafoe's character, Alvin, they both know that there's no way that they're able to kill it just like by like the basic way. They both know that she's the only way to kill him. So they're kind of doing their like little like thing. Specifically Ellen, she knows that he's not gonna those guys are not gonna kill him. He's gonna come to me. So she just knows. She basically makes a plan, and she just does her thing, and all that stuff is not in the original at all.
No, so yeah.
All the stuff that we talked about to this point, like of course the plague happened, and Nosferatu's kind of preying on like Ellen and stuff, but the whole thing with like this guy's friend's family dying, and like they're trying to hunt him down. That's not in the original. That's more. That's more added on. That's more added on. Of course, I think
that did that to build the world out, to kind of show everybody how dreadful everything is going.
I think in the original, Thomas kind of leaves for a bit. I think he's trying to go for Nosferatu, maybe kill him, but it's never he's with a whole group where it's like that. And also in the original, Ellen doesn't have a plan. She just like, oh, that night she's just sleeping. But anyways, then we get to like the big like kind of like, you know, thing of the whole movie is Ellen and Nosferatu basically like do their thing.
Yeah, they hook up pretty much, and then she kind of lets him drink her until the sun comes up, and that is what actually
guess what?
kills him.
He was sucking too long. He was sucking too long. He was sucking too long.
So yeah, so in the original, you know, Nosferatu dies and kind of disappears in a pool of smoke and kind of blows up.
Oh yeah, like it's exactly the same thing. You know, like in the original Nosferatu, he goes to her and then he just sucked for too long, and yeah, and then the sun comes out, and then they die the exact same way where the sun kills them,
yeah.
And of course in the original, like, you know, you said he just poops away, but this one is more like kind of graphic and
he kind of shrivels
and kind of like shrivels up, which I actually like because like it kind of makes sense because like
why does that make sense?
Because in vampires, like vampires are like undead creatures and they like live in darkness, so it's like when they see light, yeah, they burn, but also like I feel like, you know, like them shriveling up into like bone and like that you can see like their like whole like bones and stuff. I feel like that's like cool.
It's a cool concept. Like, you know, it's different. It's not like the normal.
Yeah.
You know, you expect
and also
the vampire to catch on fire, but in this one he didn't.
Yeah, and then you know, it's kind of a sad ending for Thomas because also Ellen dies in the process.
Yeah. Well, Ellen dies. His best friend dies.
Yeah, like
so
basically like everyone does not get a happy ending in like this new one.
Pretty much.
Except for like Willem Dafoe's character, but it's like he didn't really have nothing to lose.
That's true. And Willem Dafoe's character kind of says like, you know, now this plague has ended, we killed it, and
then he just faced the black.
So yeah, so you know, the movie was a great watch.
Great watch.
You know, some people say it was a little too long. Some people didn't like the way the story was actually progressed. A lot of people didn't like Bill Skarsgård's Nosferatu actual makeup. I've seen a lot of people kind of say like they didn't like the mustache that they went with, which a lot of people liked it and most people didn't like it. I'm in the camp of I'm almost 50-50, but I kind of liked it because it was different than a vampire movie. You know, we always see the clean cut vampire.
Like, just say it. He doesn't look like that.
He doesn't look like
He doesn't look like that.
He doesn't have the teeth. He doesn't have the clean cut, you know.
The clean cut.
He looks more like
he has like a comb over a little, like
he has a comb over and like his head is misshapen, so kind of like, you know, he looked more like a zombie at some points, I'd say. Like his skin was rotting.
Yeah, but also it's like he's an undead. He's an undead vampire, so it's like, you know, it's like what can you expect? Yeah. And same thing, like at first I didn't like the idea that he had a mustache because I thought like, oh, like why'd they go that way? But after like watching the movie and kind of like learning about it, I'm like, I kind of like it because it's an original like idea of the concept of what he's supposed to look like,
right?
And also,
and it's based on Vlad
the Impaler, which fun fact, you know, that's where Dracula was inspired from Bram Stoker. Bram Stoker's story of Dracula, where Vlad the Impaler. There's like a whole story on it. We're not gonna get into that because his whole story is like really huge.
Yeah, but Vlad the Impaler was the motivation of
Dracula.
Of Dracula. So
and
not the motivation, but you know.
And if you look at pictures of him, he had a mustache. So I think that's kind of like the main thing that they went for was like, oh, Nosferatu is technically Dracula. So it's like, oh, the inspiration of Dracula and the inspiration of Dracula was Vlad, and Vlad had a mustache, so let's just have this Dracula have a mustache so it can kind of go in, and also it kind of like shows like, oh, like he's old, so it's like he has like facial hair and stuff.
Right. But and his accent too. I mean, some people like the accent. There were some scenes where I couldn't really understand because how deep the accent that Bill Skarsgård used, but this is probably a good watch with subtitles, because then you can get every single word that he's saying and kind of feel what he wants to convey to the audience. Yeah,
but also, like, well, what can we say? Because, like, the original wasn't, like...
There was no audio.
There was no audio in the original, so it's like we really didn't know what Nosferatu really sounded like.
Right.
All we just, like, knew was that, oh, he's just a vampire that just, like, was old, so it's like, how can they, like, emulate that? I think the voice sounded really good, because it just showed, like, his, like, you could tell, like, his darkness, like, he's
old.
He's old, and like that darkness is just like in there, you know.
So yeah, so wrapping up, you know, we enjoyed the film. I'm on the boat where if I'm gonna have to give it a rank, I'm gonna have to give it a 8 out of 10.
I'll go
I
the same
enjoyed
way.
it enough to where, as a horror fan, I enjoyed it. It did lack in the scares.
Yeah,
but
there wasn't a lot of like
this was more of a
scares.
artsy gothic film for the gothic crowd, and like who wants to be in the artsy scene.
Yeah.
Like it's more of a film about darkness. But yeah, I gave it an 8 out of 10.
I give it the same thing, like
8
you
out of
know,
10.
it's
Yeah,
8 out of 10.
I'd say it's an 8 out of 10. It's
It's a solid.
It's a good, solid movie. I think it's gonna win a bunch of awards just by the art style and the way it was filmed. Beautiful cinematography.
Yeah.
And yeah. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today. Make sure to like the video, comment, and subscribe. Actually, drop a comment if you watched Nosferatu already. Did you enjoy it? Let us know what you felt about it, because, this is one of those movies where there's going to be different opinions.
Yes.
So we want to hear your opinion. So drop that comment. Thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure.
Peace. And go watch Cursed Depths.
Go watch Cursed Depths.
Go watch Cursed Depths.
Don't forget to like the video.